Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 29 of the BadMotoGP-Show. We just finished watching the races in Argentina. We had some crazy action in MotoGP, a cool Moto2 race, but not too spectacular in my opinion, and an absolutely crazy Moto3 race once again, and all in the wet, and we're here to discuss it all. So, Keelan, hello, and did you enjoy the races?
Buenos noches, Leo. Buenos noches, everybody. We are back, not from Argentina, but we're back from watching Argentina. And as always, Rio Hondo delivered absolutely epic Sunday. Some brilliant, brilliant racing, especially, not to give any spoilers, but especially in Moto 3 and MotoGP. Moto 2 was there. It was good. We had a nice time. We had a vibe. But MotoGP and Moto 3 were just epic, pretty much from beginning to end. Look forward to breaking it down and discussing it all.
Yeah, before we start, could you do me a little favor and push the microphone a little bit further away from you? In my headphones, you're a little bit louder than usual. So, yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
thank you very much. And
No,
yeah, I would like to start with MotoGP. And unlike last time, we can discuss the winner first because this time there were no huge dive bombs, except from Maverick. But we will get into this later. Marco Bezzecchi got his first victory, Valentino Rossi's first victory as a team owner, and he did it in absolutely dominant fashion. I mean, he had a good sprint race. We discussed this yesterday on our IG Live. For everybody who doesn't know, we like to separate those things and discuss the sprint race on the IG Live right after the race, usually. And here we discuss only the main races. So yeah, Marco Bezzecchi had an incredible race, wiped the floor with everybody, and incredible. He showed what kind of a talent he is. So yeah, what's your take on it?
yeah, I'm very much where you are actually. First of all, the biggest congratulations to Marco Bezzecchi and to the VR46 team. Absolutely fantastic win, and one that's been coming for a while. Actually, this is not a bolt out of the blue. This is not a Brad Binder in Austria win where it really came out of nowhere. The VR46 boys have been making real progress since last season. They've been getting podiums, they've been getting in those positions, and it was only a matter of time and a matter of where it happened. And it happened today, and it was an incredibly well deserved victory for Marco Bezzecchi, who is now the newest Italian MotoGP star. As if they needed any more, they now have another world class star in Marco Bezzecchi. But in terms of the race itself, just an imperious performance, just dominated from lap one to the last lap. Never looked like giving it up. Just looked smooth. Just banged out the laps brilliantly. Handled the weather conditions phenomenally well. Never looked in any kind of trouble, any kind of doubt. Showed his class. Showed his championship caliber, which is weird to say, but I think we are really seeing championship caliber from Marco Bezzecchi, and just a truly brilliant performance, and actually a very entertaining, dominating performance, which we don't get very many of. He actually managed to make it look good as well. So big congratulations to Marco Bezzecchi. Big congratulations to Uccio and the rest of the team at Mooney VR46 for an incredibly well-deserved win. And I think we'll see many more of them in the near future.
Yes. And fun fact, before we really start to get into the Marco Bezzecchi performance, it was the first victory in MotoGP, not only of Marco Bezzecchi, not only of Valentino Rossi's team, also of the GP22, which sounds incredibly weird, but the GP22 has never won a race before because, as many of you might think, Pecco won all the races last year. He did it on a GP21.5 because it was the GP22 chassis, but with the GP21 engine inside. So it wasn't a real GP22. And Enea Bastianini won with the GP21. And this season, Pecco won with the GP23. But this race was the first race where a real GP22 with a chassis and a GP22 engine won a race. So yeah, sounds weird, but it is actually the case. And regarding what you just said, that it was a dominant but entertaining performance, I feel like the weather made had a big influence on this, because usually when you're in wet conditions and you don't have anybody in front of you, it's difficult to judge where are the wet patches, because the track changes from lap to lap, or can change from lap to lap. It depends so much on the weather, and you have no reference in front of you. And
Most definitely.
Marco Bezzecchi, he had no reference for almost the entire race, and managed to do it in a way nobody else could match. I mean, Johann Zarco towards the end was very fast, but it felt like that Marco Bezzecchi kind of took it more easily after he had like 7 seconds of a lead. And absolutely incredible, but you always had this fear, oh come on, don't fuck it up, don't fuck it up, don't fuck it up, because it's wet. It can happen almost at every corner. And yeah, he made a great effort, he had a great performance, very, very calm, and he did it. And congratulations, I'm very, very happy for him.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually have another fun fact. Not only was it Marco Bezzecchi's first victory, not only was it Valentino Rossi's first victory as a team owner, it was Ducati's first victory in Argentina ever. So it's been a day of records, it really has. And Marco Bezzecchi is immortalized as the first Ducati rider to ever win in Argentina. And I can't think of a better rider to have deserved it. I really, really can't. It was just such a great show. And one thing I'll add on Bezzecchi before we move on, because I think you made a great point. Racing in the rain and leading that race is actually harder than being behind somebody, because like you said, you have no reference for the racing line, for how to take the corners and really how to manage the race. It's not like in the dry where you pretty much know where everything is from the previous sessions. When it's bucketing down heavily, you have to be able to manage that, and you're setting the trail for everybody behind you. So you have to be able to judge that, and you have to be able to keep your own pace, which makes it 10 times more difficult. So credit to Marco Bezzecchi, because that was a truly stellar show today. It really was.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's actually the last track to fall, in a sense, where where Ducati never won a race. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I would have to look it up, because I don't know from the top of my head. But what I do know is that Marco Bezzecchi has an incredible future with Ducati. We talked a little bit last time about the potential of maybe Marc Marquez going to Ducati, with Alex Marquez being there now, and he's a little bit frustrated at Honda. He obviously missed the race, but if I was Ducati, I would be looking at Pecco and Enea as my riders for the future. And then I have a whole bunch of riders coming up. I mean, I have Marco Bezzecchi right now, and I would look more into riders like Pedro Acosta or maybe Tony Arbolino, to develop, because they have this luxury, and I don't see necessarily why they would bring in Marc Marquez. But yeah, I think that Marco Bezzecchi showed Ducati today that he is there to have a future with them. And if whatever happens with Pecco and Enea and the factory team, I think that Marco Bezzecchi will actually be a replacement for them, because he's that good. And it's always with the rider, when they have their first victory, and unlocks some kind of confidence where they can all of a sudden believe more in themselves and do it over and over again. We saw it with Pecco in 2021, for example, big example. And yeah, I think that Bezzecchi is there to stay, and believe he can do whatever he wants on a motorcycle. Maybe a future world champion, who knows? But yeah, what you said also totally impressive, that he did it in such a dominant way, because we saw it in Moto 3. It's actually pretty difficult to race in these conditions, and it takes a lot of skill to do what Marco Bezzecchi did.
Yeah, it does. It's such a big part of racecraft. And it's actually like Nigel Mansell once said in the British Touring Car Championship, even though it's not the same thing. Nigel Mansell once said, if you can't drive in the wet, you can't drive. It is the same principle with MotoGP. If you can't ride in the wet, you can't ride. Valentino Rossi was a master at riding in the wet. We've seen Miguel Oliveira dominate in the wet as well. Wet racing is a big part of racing. Having that skill in your locker is such a big thing. Jack Miller is very good at it. Brad Binder normally is very good at it. And so having this skill so early on is going to be a massive help to Marco Bezzecchi, because now he knows whether it'll probably happen this season in many other places, but whether it happens in the rest of this season and in seasons to come, now he knows when there's a wet weekend or a wet Sunday, he now knows I've won. I've not only won in a wet race, but I've dominated in a wet race. And now he has the mindset of I can go out and beat everybody in these conditions if I get out in front and I get to set the pace. So this victory is so important for so many reasons, and that's just one of them. So Marco Bezzecchi, this is really a benchmark for him of how good we know he is. If he can build on this, he could really be the next Enea Bastianini and push for that title.
Yeah, we discussed it a little bit yesterday on the IG Live. He could be a dark horse in the championship, where especially the first half of the season, where the GP23 maybe isn't as understood as the GP22. And as it develops over the season, the GP23, I think perhaps will be better towards the end of the season. I think it's a fair assumption to make.
Yeah.
But especially at the beginning, we saw it last year with Enea Bastini, when you know what you have. And the GP22 is a bike which already competed all of last year, and they have all the data. A rider like Marco Bezzecchi, who is extremely talented, can do some serious damage in the races to come. And I think more towards the end of the season, we will see the GP23 kind of separating themselves from the GP22s. But yeah, I think that Marco Bezzecchi really, really has a big future, and also this season can say a word in who wins the title.
Yeah, he will have. I think he'll have a big say in who wins the title because he will be in the title picture. And one last point I want to add before we move on, and this is to the people watching. If you don't know and if you haven't had the chance to be involved yet, please do get involved in our Instagram lives. We do them every Saturday night after the sprint race in MotoGP, and we discuss so much more stuff, even some more stuff than we do on the podcast that you're watching now. We answer your questions. We talk about our theories about different things. So if you are on Instagram and you haven't been involved yet, please free to come along and get involved. We love interacting with all of you. We love answering your questions, putting our theories forward, hearing your thoughts. And yeah, please make sure to get involved because this is a lot of stuff that we have discussed already. So head on over there on Saturdays and check that out as well.
Yeah, and it's approved by Pedro Acosta, so what more can you say?
It's literally approved by Pedro Acosta. We'll get on to that later, but we'll let you know what we mean.
Yeah, we discussed the good of Ducati, and now we're coming to the bad and the ugly, which is Pecco once again. We praised him after Portimao and after the sprint yesterday that he's riding in such an intelligent way, and he was doing it for most of the time today. I mean, he did it until he didn't. So yeah, in classic Pecco Bagnaia fashion, he lost the front in the last corner or in the last right-hand corner, the second to last corner, with no reason at all. I mean, he overtook Alex Marquez, who isn't a real threat in the championship for him. If he wanted to, cool, do that. But if you don't have the outright pace to pull away from him, take third place. It's much more valuable to get 16 points than to end up in the gravel again. And I thought last season he learned his lesson because he came back from 91 points, but apparently Pecco Bagnaia isn't capable of learning this because he threw it again. He threw it away once again, and I don't know what to say. I thought he might have been taking the time in the off season to learn that it's better to take a third place or a fifth place even than to end up in the gravel again. He was so fed up with himself, like he was in Motegi, because he knows better, but for some reason he can't control it. And if you aren't able to capitalize from a big championship contender like Marc Marquez being away, or uh, Enea Bastianini being away, and Fabio Quartararo having a tough couple of races, and throw it away for no reason at all, then I mean, what more do you want to say? It's like a typical Pecco weekend.
It is, yeah, and I think what we've seen with Pecco is I don't know if it's necessarily what I would call recklessness, because I think he's matured beyond the point of being reckless. At least I hope he has. My theory about this is it's something that Neil Hodgson said, I think in 2020 or 2021 when Pecco won his first race. When you win that first race, it's like a shark getting a taste of blood in the water. You're going to keep winning and you're going to want to keep winning. And I think with Pecco, what we see sometimes is a rider who's so used to winning that the taste of second or third place is almost bitter to him because he's used to winning. And I think he was just so desperate to try and make up that impossible gap to Marco Bezzecchi that he rushed getting past Alex Marquez. He thought to himself, right, I'm past Alex Marquez. How do I make up this time to Bezzecchi? And I think he just overcooked it out of desperation and he binned it. That's pretty much the only theory I can come up with. The only thing that works in Pecco's favor is that it's the second race of the season, and he will make the points up by winning others. Like in Austin, he will be competitive, and in the races afterwards, he will be competitive. But if this is a sign of things to come, that he's feeling the pressure already, then this is not a good sign. And he has to hope that this is a one off this season and that this does not continue. Because you just made a great point, Leo. These are the weekends when you really have to capitalize. When Marc Marquez is out injured, when Fabio Quartararo, who I still maintain along with you is the most naturally talented rider on the grid, when riders like these, your direct rivals, are struggling, having bad weekends, maybe not qualifying well, these are the weekends more than any others when you have to capitalize. And what Pecco's done is thrown away a huge advantage that he would have had. Even 20 points would have been priceless this weekend. Now he walks away with nothing and he has to build himself back up again. That's really all I can say about that.
I think it's less a case of Pecco wanting to win, because I agree with you, winning is cool, but he also had the taste of winning a championship, and that's better than winning every race combined. Because, I mean, if you win every race, you'll probably win the championship, but you know what I mean. Winning a championship gotta be the best thing that ever happens, and winning two of those, he experienced it's gotta be absolutely amazing. And he wants to win 3 and 4 and 5. And why not? Because he has the bike, he has the talent to do so, but he also has to finish a race. And I believe it's less a case of him wanting to catch Bezzecchi and win. I got more of a feeling that Alex Marquez gave him a very tough time in the sprint. And the brief period where they were battling, Alex Marquez wasn't necessarily kind to Pecco, where, I mean, he was clean, but he was aggressive. Fair play to him. He has every right to do so.
Of
But
course.
but I felt like this fucked a little bit with Pecco's head, where from the outside it's obviously easy to judge, but I think that if you want to battle with him and you feel comfortable, okay, do it. And then you overtook him, but then he overcooked it in a way where I believe he wanted to make a gap to Alex to not be involved in this battling again. And yeah, in this case, if you're scared to battle Alex Marquez, don't overtake him. Take third. Alex Marquez is no contender for the title, realistically. Marco Bezzecchi could be, but I think that Pecco still has the better overall package than Marco Bezzecchi. And yeah, take third place. It's all fine. Even if Zarco catches you, take fourth. Who cares?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I absolutely do. And the thing that Pecco's going to have to get used to, especially being the champion, is that now the bullseye is firmly sprayed on the back of his leathers. He's not chasing the champion anymore. He is the champion. And the Sharks are starting to circle because they all want a taste of winning the title. And now, instead of really the last couple of years, we're really, with the exception of a freak title, which was Johann, our last two champions have been Fabio Quartararo and Pecco Bagnaia, the two best riders in the grid. Now we have 4, 5, 6 riders who could strongly influence where the title goes. You know what? It's something we've talked about a lot. 8 Ducatis on the grid. Those Ducatis are going to take points off each other because everybody's on the best bike and everybody wants to win. Jorge Martin hasn't won yet this season. Johann Zarco is getting close. The VR46 team is strong. All right, yes, Zarco getting close. I know there's a debate about that, but he's always in the mix somewhere, and he will always influence points one way or the other. And that's not to mention the other manufacturers. Aprilia looks strong. Franco Morbidelli had a brilliant weekend. Yamaha maybe are starting to find something. So when it comes to serving as the reigning champion, you've got to be so careful to be able to manage all of these threats and to not let it get to you, which is a point you've always made. You cannot let this get to your head, because if it does, then you may as well give up, because there are 6, 7 riders who will pick up the pieces if you fall.
Since 2020, I feel like there's a shift in MotoGP. Pecco was kind of an exception to that, but it's like everybody is competitive and everybody can win on any given weekend. But
Yes.
since everybody is competitive, everybody is also a little bit inconsistent, where
Yes.
you might win one race and then the next time you're 10th. And last year it changed a little bit. Fabio was very good towards the beginning of the season. Pecco was very good towards the end of the season. But like those riders, except Marquez, Pecco Bagnaia, and Fabio Quartararo, the three most naturally gifted riders on the grid right now, and also Enea Bastianini and maybe Marco Bezzecchi, you have those riders who tend to be a little bit more consistent when half of them are out and injured, and Fabio is having his early season struggles with Yamaha like he seemingly always has. Um, you have to pick up the points and realize Alex Marquez is not a contender for the title. I mean, he will be there maybe 5 to 10 weekends. I don't know. But he's not there every weekend. And Pecco has the capabilities to be there every weekend. Inea has two, Marquez has two. And if the Yamaha works, Fabio has two. But you have to understand this and then take a third place. I mean, a fourth place. Who fucking cares? 13 points are better than no points, and 16 points are better than no points. And it's the same old story with Pecco, like in Qatar last year, where he lost his head because things weren't going his way. In Le Mans, where he lost his head. In Motegi, where he lost his head. In Germany, where he lost his head. And the only crash last season he had where he wasn't at fault was in Catalonia, because Taka Nakagami took him out. But it's always the same story with Pecco. He let somebody influence or something influence his concentration, and therefore he does something stupid where 1 second later he regrets it. And I don't know what it takes for Pecco to learn this, but he needs to be more consistent, because if he is, nobody can beat him.
Yeah. I
On
mean,
this bike, nobody can beat him.
I completely agree. A consistent Pecco is an unbeatable Pecco. The problem with Pecco is that Pecco is not consistent. He'll be great for 5, 6, 7, even 8 races, and then one race throws it all away, and he lets someone get to him, and he bins it again. This is why, I mean, I don't think it's fair to directly compare the two, because I think they're both brilliant, but this is why I'm such a big Fabio Quartararo fan. Fabio, as we have discussed many times, even last season in season 1 of the podcast, Fabio has a worse package by far. Pecco's got the best bike, Fabio's got the worst bike, but Fabio can still make it work, and he doesn't let people get to him. Okay, yes, he binned Alicia Spargo last season, but that was just an accident in Assen. That was bad weather conditions and so on. With Pecco, you have to adopt the mindset of, if Alex Marquez is ahead of me, let him win the battle. I'm fighting for the war. This is the mindset you have to have. This is what Fabio did in 2021. Fabio didn't win every single race. Fabio was willing to take second places, third places, and put his ego aside. And this is what champions are made of. Unless it's 2019 Marc Marquez and you literally smoke the whole grid. But you don't get 2019 Marc Marquez's every day. They're rarities. It's why they're so good. You gotta rein in the ego of being a Ducati rider. Park the ego in pit lane. Go out. If you can win the race, brilliant. More power to you. But if it means taking a second, a third, a fourth place, take the points. Because then The next weekend, you've got a 13-point platform, a 16-point platform to build on top of the win that you might get next weekend. Instead, Pecco's heading to Austin with 0 points from this weekend when he should have at least 16. And now he's got to start all over again.
To be fair, he had some points in the sprint race, I believe 5. And but yeah, I get what you said.
Mm.
And I mean, Johann Zarco came on late. He put Pecco and Alex Marquez under pressure, and also Frankie. But maybe he knew something that Zarco was coming and was a little bit eager to get on with this. But I mean, Zarco as well. He had a great race, and like he did in Thailand last year, came on too strong but too late and missed out on the win. But yeah, he had a great weekend, but he doesn't have those weekends very often. And he needs to find a way to be as good as he was towards the end of the race at the beginning of the race. If he had a good start and was there with Marco Bezzecchi, it would be a good night for everybody else.
Yeah, Zarco had a great race. A lot of credit he does deserve. Like you said, Johann Zarco's big issue is that he comes on strong, but he leaves it too late. If Zarco had started pressing a quarter of the way into the race, he probably would have. I don't think he would have won today because Bezzecchi was too good, but he at least would have secured second place, a lot earlier. Um, and this is the thing with Johann Zarco. I think sometimes he lacks confidence in knowing when to push. It's not the pushing that's the issue because he does it brilliantly. I mean, we saw it last weekend in Portimao where he came in. He finished fourth, and he did it so well by timing it and getting past everybody. If he actually pushed earlier in the race, he'd be competing for the win a lot more than he does. He just has to have more self belief, and he will do it. Even though I like Zarco, the only thing I will say is F him for taking the podium away from Frankie. I was so looking forward to seeing Morbidelli in the podium. So I love you, Zarco, but fuck you, but I love you. That's where I'm at with this.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Marquez and Johann Zarco deserved the podium, but Frankie deserved it more, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Zarco, I largely agree with you, but I don't know what his issue is. I mean, he when he qualifies good, he fucks up the start of the race. When he qualifies bad, he's good towards the end of the race. And I don't know what's the deal with him because at one point I know Frankie had like a 6 second gap to whoever was behind him. And I know
Zarco.
that I don't know if it was Zarco because a lot of time it was Rins and Fabio Di Gianantonio
Oh
were
yeah,
there.
it was.
I
Sorry, you're
can't
right. It
remember.
was Alex Rins.
Yeah, I can't remember. And Jorge Martin, then it changed a little bit, this P5, I believe, at the time. But yeah, then Zarco came and he had like more of a 6 second gap to Frankie and Bezzecchi, that's his name, I'm sorry, had like a 7 second gap to P2. And of course, you don't overcome like a 15-second gap at some point. He surely would have a 15-second gap at some point during the race, but let's say it was only 10 seconds, whatever. You don't overcome a 10-second gap in MotoGP. You can be whoever you want. It's not happening anymore. But what you can do is position yourself, and then towards the end of the race, you can earn what you put into, earn the fruits of your labor early in the race. But
Yeah.
for some reason, it didn't happen with him. And you could argue, I don't know if this is true, but you could argue that if he were pushing this early in the race, he wouldn't have been as good late in the race because he would using up his tires and all of this. I don't know. And I haven't listened to any interviews yet with any riders. So yeah, but Zarco and Marquez did very well, but it wasn't as good as Bezzecchi. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great summary. And, Alex Marquez deserves a lot of credit too. I'm glad you mentioned him. He does deserve a credit because he had a great race too. I think with Zarco, it's a bit like Aaron Canet in Moto 2, where I think there's just such a mental block with both of them that they just don't believe that they can win. And I think if both of those riders won, they would win about 100 more races because then the block would be off them and they would have the belief to push and extend and ride out the rest of the race by taking more of a risk. But I think with Zarco, he deserves a lot of credit because it was a great comeback in very bad conditions. Like I said, would I have preferred to have seen Frankie in the podium? Yes, but then I'm a big Morbidelli fan. But Zarco was a deserving third place. It was a great race, and he managed it very well. So credit to him.
Yeah, and I think pound for pound, like we judge people in MMA, pound for pound, Frankie was the best rider this weekend
I
because he was
agree.
on an inferior bike where he had no business on being this far on the far at the top on the grid because Yamaha isn't necessarily the best qualifying bike anymore. Fabio is a very, very capable qualifier, and he can't even put the thing on the front two rows. And during the race, he had no business being there for whatever reason. He has been bad over the last 2 years, and the Yamaha has been bad over the last 2 years. They had no business being there. But I mean, at the end, Marco Bezzecchi was better. I mean, Francis Ngannou would knock out Brandon Moreno, but pound for pound, Brandon Moreno is the better fighter in my opinion, um, because he has more than just a power jab and a power right hand, you know. But yeah, back to Frankie, pound for pound, he was the best rider to me. What he did was absolutely incredible. And if he were on a Ducati, he would have been on the podium.
Yeah, again I agree with what you've said. I think with Franco Morbidelli, he needs his confidence back, and I think if you had a confident Morbidelli with a current Quartararo, and Yamaha would be right back in the title race, and maybe not the constructor title because that's just a lost cause, but certainly the Riders' Championship they would be back in, and the reason. People may wonder why I like Franco Morbidelli so much, and I will tell you why when you see a race like this race today, I'm reminded of how good Franco Morbidelli is. You know, in 2020, he was unbelievable. And in my opinion, he should have won the title that year. It should have been Franco Morbidelli, Fabio Quartararo, Pecco Bagnaia. Now, Joan Mir won it, credit to him. But Franco Morbidelli is such a gifted motorcycle racer. And people forget that and they slander my man's name sometimes when they see him towards the bottom of the timetable and they forget how good he is. And today, I hope, was a reminder to a lot of people of how phenomenal of a motorcycle racer Franco Morbidelli is. And I hope this is a launch pad for the rest of the season for him because if he can qualify well, he's proven in the sprint race. He more than held his own. When everybody was losing their minds around him, he was able to keep his head and get that M1 in fourth place, which is incredible. If he can get his confidence back and he can support Fabio, Yamaha could be right back in it.
Yeah. I've been screaming at the TV the entire time during the sprint race, like, get him on the brakes. And when Marini was beside him, brake fucking later. And when he was behind Brad Binder, get him, come on, Frankie. I mean, I rarely have these much emotions during a MotoGP race, but yeah, I love Frankie. He is an incredible character, and yeah, I'm very happy for him. And I've seen a video clip about this concept of things being okay that you pass on with it. For example, if you're in a relationship, which is okay, I mean, you're not happy, but it's also not completely shit, and therefore you carry on. Where you're like in a situation where it's not good, but it's also not bad. Or when you're in a job where, I mean, your boss is sometimes a dick, sometimes it's okay. They leave you alone. You get some good money. It's more or less safe, but it doesn't really is what you want to do. But you keep on with it.
Going
And the
through the
concept,
motions.
yeah, and the concept basically says when those people were worse off in their situations, it would be better because it would encourage them to change something. And I feel like Frankie and Yamaha have been in exactly this situation over the past 2 years. It has been absolutely shit. And it wasn't just okayish, like for example, Johann Zarco and Ducati. But I think Ducati would be better off with another rider. But Zarco is doing fine. He had some podiums. He's doing the development work for them. It's all cool, but it could be better. That's all I'm saying. And Frankie has been in a situation where I believe, from his perspective and also from Yamaha's perspective, it has been shit over the past 2 years. And my prediction still is that Marco Bezzecchi will go to Pramac and replace Jorge Martin, who will go to Yamaha. And Frankie has a spot at Valentino's team with the Ducati. This is my early prediction for next season. And I think if Frankie was better over the last 2 years, he wouldn't be in a situation where potentially he could end up on the best race and best bike on the grid. And I forgot the name of the gentleman who explained this concept on a podcast, I believe it was. But yeah, if you know, you know. If not, it's not my gibberish. It's somebody else's. So yeah, but I think Frankie, to summarize it, he's been in a shitty situation where it's shitty enough to change something which could end up being positive for him. And my opinion is that he could end up on a GP23 next year in Valentino Rossi's team.
Psychology 101 with the Bad MotoGP podcast. You don't get this kind of insight anywhere else, ladies and gentlemen, especially from Leo. I mean, come on, that was fantastic. But yeah, look, I love Franco Morbidelli, and I really like Franco Morbidelli at Yamaha. Look, if he ever got the chance to be in the Ducati, of course I would tell him to go for it because he deserves to be on the best bike. I would never deny him that. But I just think him being a staple of the Yamaha team, there's something, I just think it's a good fit. Sometimes when you see a person with a particular football team or a MotoGP team and it just looks right. That's what Franco Morbidelli and Yamaha is with me. And look, the last 2 years, like you said, they have been shit. They've been shit for Yamaha because the bike's been shit, and they've been shit for Morbidelli because his confidence and his mentality has been shit. But that's why I'm so hopeful for what I've seen from this race this weekend. And even in Portimao, Morbidelli looked a lot better as well. It looks like he has his confidence back and he's starting to reignite and start up again. And I'm just so hopeful that this year he may get his 2020 form back again. Because if he does, him and Fabio could absolutely lead the charge for Yamaha again to the riders' title. I really believe they could. Now, look, the Yamaha obviously needs to improve a lot. The speed they're getting better at, but like you said on the IG Live, they've worked on the engine but not the chassis, and pretty much every other manufacturer has worked on everything developing. But Franco, I'm so happy for, and I hope this is the start of it for him now.
And if indeed Jorge Martin already signed for Yamaha, which isn't confirmed, but it's a rumor, and let's pretend it happened, and the kind of resurrection of Frankie came at exactly the right place, because now he has the time to show everybody else how good he really is. And the Yamaha and him, they were a perfect match in 2019, 2020, but then they kind of developed into different directions. I feel like the Yamaha has changed its character over the last 2 years, where it has to be ridden very, very aggressively. And Frankie is such a smooth operator that it doesn't fit anymore. And he's better off with a Ducati, like everybody else would, but also maybe an Aprilia or whatever, But I think that Frankie now has a time frame where he can kind of have a job interview for everybody else and get himself a good seat for the future, because he's too good to be out of MotoGP.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at the grid, and this is why it's such a shame Suzuki have gone, because I think the GSX-RR would have been a perfect fit for someone like Morbidelli. A bike that can be ridden smoothly, but that's the way you get the most out of it. Even the Ducati now, you can ride smoothly and get the most out of it. I mean, look at Marco Bezzecchi today. Marco Bezzecchi is not an aggressive rider, and he just got so much out of that bike today. So with Franco Morbidelli, he will be around the paddock for quite a long time. I'm pretty confident about that, because even if it isn't Yamaha, if the Jorge Martin rumor is true, there's a lot of landing spots for Franco Morbidelli. There are places that will suit him just as well, if not better. But like I said, I hope he can make Yamaha work, and I hope this is the start of his season kicking on now, because him and Fabio on top form are still arguably the second best team in the paddock.
What would be the worst case scenario is if Valentino Rossi changed to Yamaha for next year and then Frankie stays on the same old shitbugs. But
Oh god, he'd want to kill himself. Oh
let's
god,
hope
no.
let's hope he gets a Ducati and Valentino Rossi stays with Ducati. And Fabio had an incredible race today. In this sense, I think the dog wants to go out. Or she wants to join the show again. Let me get her.
Peanuts back. Peanut.
Hello, everybody. Peanut is back. Yeah, she had an incredible day today because she had some time at the stable of my girlfriend. She always comes with us there, where we went um, onto the field where the horses are, and she chased some horses. She got some sticks, and she I don't know the English word when the dogs are shoving the mud away, you know.
Oh
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, she was digging a hole. That's what it is. She was digging a little hole, and then we came back, and the 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 place where we park our cars. Apparently, there was some kind of a mouse or whatever, I don't know. And I caught her while she was eating something. So yeah, she had an incredible day. Then we watched some MotoGP. Unfortunately, a little lady had to get brushed today, and she hates it. But yeah, so she's been sleeping at my office for the last couple of minutes. But yeah, now she's awake, wants to go out, and I will let her out and be right back with you in a second.
Ladies and gentlemen, the intermission of the Bad MotoGP podcast, sponsored by Peanut, the mascot of the podcast. I love that dog so much.
Okay, we are back. And yeah, Peanut had an incredible day. Fabio didn't, because Fabio's day was shit as always in MotoGP nowadays. He had some bad luck again, like apparently nobody else has on the grid. He was taken wide by Taka and was in last place at some point and had to fight himself up, I believe, to seventh on the eventual standings, overtaking everybody where it's impossible to overtake anyways in MotoGP, and doing all the extra work nobody else had to do just because he was put in a shitty situation once again. Like his basic situation isn't shitty enough. Johann and Taka Nakagami have to ruin his races for him, and therefore he has to do the extra work. But yeah, he did a very, very good recovery job, but bad luck as seemingly as always.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Fabio Quartararo's favorite song must be "Break Stuff" by Limp Bizkit. That must be what he's thinking, because it's just one of those days where he must just not want to wake up. Everything's effed, and everybody does indeed suck. But Fabio doesn't, because that was a phenomenal recovery job by him. And look, I mean, you cannot feel anything but empathy for Fabio Quartararo. You know, you're starting in a tough enough position as it is. I believe he started P10 on the grid. You go to the first corner, you get shoved wide by Taka Nakagami, and then you've got to try and recover somehow 10 places from the rest of that race. And it's a testament to the genius, the writing genius of Fabio Quartararo, that he and only he could probably do that. I mean, look, the guy's just a wizard. He's on another level. And the fact that he even got it to P7's unbelievable. If he was able to qualify near the top of the grid, he would be back to getting serious points. So my only hope is that that bike works out sooner rather than later, and Franco and Fabio are back at it, because that performance was brilliant.
Yeah. And what, for the love of God, I don't understand is the stewarding in MotoGP.
Oh,
I have
Jesus
no
Christ.
idea. I mean, I avoided talking about it all off season. We talked a little bit about it last episode, I'm sorry. But once again, I have no idea. We will discuss Moto 3 in a minute, but I have no idea how you can judge a racing incident, for example, like Taka did, so differently week in, week out. I mean, if you at least be consistent with it. But when we look back last year, for example, Frankie in Malaysia, he had a last lap overtake, I believe, on Aleix Espargaro, where he pushed him wide on the last lap. Nothing happened. And he got through, got the position, and then they demoted him a position. Then Taka completely ruins Fabio's race, and it's not like he's a first-time offender. He did it last year in Catalonia with Alex Rins and Pecco, then in Mugello with Alex Rins again. Made them crash in both instances. They don't give him a penalty, and you have Maverick Vinales wiping out Brad Binder and ruining his race, and you don't give him a penalty. Or back to Fabio's point, when Aleix Espargaro in Buriram last year sent Brad Binder wide, he got a penalty. It was also rain conditions. I simply don't understand what the fuck's going on. Please be consistent. I mean, if you want to give them a penalty for sending somebody else wide, okay, cool. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but at least be consistent. You can't judge one instance like Maverick and Brad Binder this way this week, and next week when somebody takes somebody else out, give them a long lap penalty. Like Johann Mir last week in Portimao took out Fabio, sent him wide, but crashed by himself. He didn't get a penalty. He did get a penalty, I'm sorry. But no um, Maverick had no advantage, but also no disadvantage, and completely ruined Brad Binder's race and didn't get a penalty, where Joan Mir at least ruined his own race and therefore was kind of penalized, but also got another penalty. But I don't understand. I'm actually already fed up 2 races in the season, and we will talk about Moto 3 in a minute, which had absolutely ridiculous stewarding, where overtake of Ayumu Sasaki got himself a drop 1 position penalty or whatever. And yeah, it's so frustrating with these stewards. I don't know what the fuck they're smoking, but I don't want anything from it. I want the good stuff, not the bad stuff. And yeah, I don't understand what the fuck's going on with them. I really don't.
To quote Jose Mourinho, if I speak, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say what I really think about this, but come on, stewards. I mean, what are you doing? What what race are you watching? Or what are you seeing that we aren't seeing? I mean, Fabio loses 7 places from getting bumped out wide by Nakagami.
He was dead last. I mean, Brad
Dead.
Binder was behind him, but Brad Binder crashed. He was dead last. He was behind Augusto Fernandez.
He was literally at the foot of the grid, dead last, lost 7 places through no fault of his own. No penalty, nothing given. Maverick Vinales wipes out Brad Binder. Nothing happens, we're not going to give anything. Ayumu Sasaki does an overtake. Let's give him a penalty and let's drop him a position that eventually leads to him high-siding like 2 corners later. What are you doing, stewards? I mean,
Yeah.
oh my god.
And Joan Mir and Fabio Quartararo in Portimao last weekend had a similar incident like Fabio had in Assen with Aleix, and at least both got a long lap for it. And it makes sense when you compare those 2 instances with it, because it would have been unfair to Fabio to not give Joan Mir a long lap penalty. But it's also unfair to Brad Binder to give Maverick not a penalty, and it's unfair to Fabio to not give Tucker a penalty. If you would flip them and put 2 other riders in it, let's say whatever. I mean, Frankie and Aleix last season, or Aleix and Brad Binder. When you have those instances, all of a sudden you have a penalty. It makes no fucking sense, and it's ruining the sport in a way that you don't have consistent officiating, where you can kind of pick and choose on who to give a penalty and who not to, and therefore you influence a championship. I mean, there's points up for grabs, and when there are points up for grabs, there's money up for grabs, and you are literally pulling money out of a rider's pocket. For example, when they have a contract with their team where they get X amount of euros for X amount of points. And when you give them a long lap penalty for something where another rider did exactly the same and didn't get a long lap penalty, it's unfair. Be consistent with it. When When you're in MMA and you have an eye poke and one fighter gets a point deduction, but the other pokes him back and doesn't get a point deduction, it's unfair.
It's a complete mess. And look, I'm not going to get the podcast cancelled because we enjoy what we do, and there's certain things I'm not going to say, but the lack of consistency is. It's not even at a point where I find it funny anymore. I'm genuinely quite concerned by this because my problem with this is, right, okay, these two incidents happen at the start of the race. I get the notification on the screen, incident between Vinales and Bender under review by stewards. Okay, they're looking at it, fair enough. Incident between Ryder Quartararo and Ryder Nakagami under review by stewards. Okay, this is good. Something's going to happen. We're finally going to get some consistency, no penalties, and I mean, what the hell are you watching that we're not watching? These riders are losing positions and they're losing riding in the race through no fault of their own, and the person culpable and responsible for that is getting no punishment. I mean, this cannot just be us that's seeing this. Like you said, they're ruining the sport because there's no consistency, there's no baseline here at all. The baseline is about as stable as the Austin racetrack. That's how stable the level of officiating is. It's terrible. And like you said, to use the MMA example because it is appropriate, if one fighter gets an eye poke and they get a point deducted and the other does it but doesn't, there's no sense in that. There would be a riot if that happened. More people need to start complaining about this because it's ruining the sport. And like, for example, Brad Binder has had a brilliant start to his campaign. He's now out of the points because of something nothing to do with him. Fabio Quartararo very nearly left Argentina with no points because of an incident that had nothing to do with him. Now, fortunately for Fabio, he was able to fix that. But stewards, you're there to protect the riders and to enforce the rules. Do the job you're there to do, or don't do it. Well, they're not doing it at all. But either do the job or let someone else do it if you can't, because it's getting really, really annoying now. It's getting to the point where I'm gonna lose my head.
Yeah, and I think they should all be fired. There should be people put in place which are competent, which are consistent, because I don't really have an issue when they penalize something like this or when they don't penalize something like this. For example, Frankie's last lap incident last year with Aleix, um, or the Brad Binder incident with Aleix last year, and also the incident between Fabio and Joan Mir last weekend, and the incident between Maverick and not Maverick, sorry, with Tucker and Fabio. Personally, I wouldn't penalize this, but that's just my opinion. When you have an overtake and you push somebody wide, shit happens. It's not intentional, but it's definitely not something worth a penalty, in my opinion. But when you take somebody out, yes, I agree, there should be a penalty. But either way you're going with it, I'm fine with it as long as you're consistent. Because I can understand the different point of view. I can understand when you push somebody wide, they're losing, let's say, 10 positions, whatever, that you should as well get a similar penalty, which would be a long lap. But at least be consistent with it.
Yeah, and look, we're not asking, and to be fair, we are not asking the officials to get every call right because that's an impossible job. It doesn't matter if you're a football referee, MMA referee, MotoGP official, whatever your job is, you're never going to get every call right. We understand that. We're not expecting you to be God and get everything correct. What we're asking is for you to apply the rules uniformly and consistently with everybody. If you're going to penalize one thing, penalize it for everybody. If you're going to let it go for everybody. Now, today, they should have penalized both and they penalized neither. Now, to be fair, that's consistent, but that's being consistently bad. That's a different argument. But when you have the rules, at least apply them properly to everyone, or there's no point in us being here. If we're going to get to a point where everybody's just going to be able to do whatever they want, people can push people wide, people can get crashed out of races and nothing's going to happen, then why are we even here? What is the point in watching these races? Stewards, you need to do a lot better than this. Because I'm
Yeah.
tired of talking about it.
Me as well. I mean, there's so much positive about this MotoGP weekend, but we are still here of discussing the work of these dumbasses, and I'm tired of it. But apparently, we have to do it every weekend. And regarding to consistency, I mean, Taka Nakagami last year in Catalonia wiped out Pecco and Alex Rins, didn't get a penalty for it. Marc Marquez does the same, and all of a sudden, people are calling for a race ban. I mean, I understand that Marc Marquez got a penalty, and I agree with it, but I don't agree with Taka not getting a penalty. And this shit is ruining the sport in a way. You know, when you have rules, enforce them equally, and I'm fine with it. When you want to give penalties for something like Taka did, or when you don't want to give penalties for something like Taka did to Fabio, not to Pecco and Alex Rins, but I'm talking about this weekend. I'm fine with it. Either way you're going, but I'm fine with it. But please be consistent. This is my
Yeah,
issue.
that's all we want. That is all that we are asking for. If you're gonna now, the Marc Marquez penalty, as we've discussed many times, right penalty, double long lap, application arguable, but the right penalty. If you're gonna give Marc Marquez the right penalty for the right crime, give it to Nakagami for the same crime, or it is last year. You know, the argument's kind of moot at this point. But when this kind of thing happens in the future, and it will happen again in the future, all we want is for the penalties to be applied uniformly and when they should be. Look, we all love racing. I'm not asking you to punish every rider for every overtake ever made, because then it would ruin the sport. But when someone actively loses an advantage through no fault of their own, the person who takes that advantage away should be punished. That is why we have rules. That's the very purpose of having them in the first place. All we're asking for is to apply them uniformly to everyone. Now, I mean, the Marc Marquez race ban thing, that's extreme. Double long lap is the right penalty. But say Nakagami does it again this season, use Mark as the case example. All right, Mark goes into a corner, overshoots it, takes one rider out, injures another, double long lap penalty. Nakagami does the same thing, apply it to him. Johann does it in the future, apply it to him. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking for miracles. We're not asking for godlike work. We're just asking for uniformity. That's it.
Yeah, where it gets difficult when you have instances like Luca Marini and Bastianini last week, because it's a difficult one to judge, in my opinion. But to me, there's a line when you make somebody else crash, which could result in an injury. We saw it a million times already this season, sadly. And now Joan Mir missed the race. I still haven't seen the incident, what happened yesterday with Joan Mir, why he's injured, but apparently he had a severe concussion and something was up with his ankle. He missed out, and if I'm not mistaken, he's the fifth rider who missed a race because of an injury. I mean, Paul missed it. Not Alex Marquez. Mark Marquez missed it. Then Miguel Oliveira missed it. Enea Bastianini missed it. And now Joan Mir. It's almost getting to a point where you just have to finish and you get points, which brings us a little bit back to like the CRT days, which was bad back then.
Dark
But
days.
yeah, I don't need to see so many riders injured. And this is a big issue with the sprint races, but also you should take this into consideration when penalizing something. What if Brett Binder was injured today?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a valid point that has to be considered. What if Brad Binder had broken his leg? You know, again, thankfully he didn't. He's a tough guy, but this kind of thing has to protect the riders, or there's no point in us being here. It's that simple. Like I've said, and I'll say it one more time, all we're asking for is uniformity. That's all we're asking for. And I think what can be applied is actually the rugby model for punishing players on the pitch. What, just to give people a very quick overview, what they do in rugby is they establish a baseline for the offence. So say it's a red card offence in rugby. What they'll do is they'll consult with each other and say, okay, is this a red card offence? Yes, it is. Are there any mitigating factors to reduce that red to a yellow? If there is, yes, it's downgraded to a yellow. If no, it stays with a red. The reason I mention this is that we can apply this to the Luca Marini scenario. So, for example, Luca Marini takes out Enea Bastianini. We're at a red card offence. Are there any mitigating factors? Yes, there was a legitimate gap to go for, and he accidentally messed it up. No intent. We we downgrade that to a yellow. That's the model we have to implement. We've got to look at the incident and then look if there's any aggravating or mitigating factors to either upgrade or reduce the punishment. What the stewards are doing now, I have no idea, because they're picking punishments out of thin air, or they're not doing any at all. Find a system, implement the system, and apply the system. That's all you've got to do.
Yeah. My personal opinion is when you take somebody out, double long lap. When you overtake somebody and push them wide, I wouldn't personally give a penalty. But if this is something which happens more often, let's say you do this 3 times, and we start at the beginning of the season. We start in Portimao, and somebody like Tucker pushed Fabio wide today. Okay, first offense. If it happens again, long lap. And
Yeah,
then we are back to start. And then he has one free to go. If it happens again, long. As long as he doesn't make the other rider crash, I would be more tolerant with it. But as soon as you make somebody else crash, I would give a double long lap, because I don't care if it. I mean, everything is unintentional. Marquez wasn't intending to wipe out Miguel Oliveira and Jorge Martin, but he did it. Luca Marini, similar incident. He wiped out Enea Bassini. Was he intending it? No, but it's his responsibility to not crash if there's a rider right beside you. So I would give him a double long lap. And to me, Joan Mir shouldn't have gotten a penalty. As the same as Fabio in Assen last year. He shouldn't have got a penalty because they kind of penalized himself by crashing. But yeah.
yeah, and like it's the reason why we have track limit warnings, for example, and then you punish a rider if they go over that. Find that system, apply it to the various offenses that we see, and then use your discretion to work out whether it should be punished at the maximum or punished lesser. That's the way you have to do it. Like you said, it's finding the offense, matching a system to the offense, and then applying it through that. That's the only way this is ever going to get resolved, because it's going to be a nightmare otherwise.
Yeah, I would penalize people harshly for taking somebody else out, because this could end very badly. But I would be rather loose with the penalization of pushing somebody wide, because it's racing, you know.
Yeah,
Sometimes shit like this happens, but as long as you don't take anybody out, it's okayish.
exactly. That's all it has to be. I think stewards have got such a bad habit of overcomplicating things when they're actually much simpler than people think they are. If you take someone out, automatic double long lap penalty. If you go past somebody but they stay on track, use your discretion at that point. If you don't want to punish them and no one loses out, completely fine. If someone does lose out but they stay in the track, take it from there. But stop overcomplicating things that don't need to be so difficult. Just find the rules, apply them, and move.
I think the dog wants to go in
Mm-hmm.
again.
Hey, no problem.
Okay, Peanut is back. I gotta cut all these pauses out later, but yeah, if she wants to listen to us or listen to me, I guess she doesn't hear you because she has no headphones on. But yeah, what I wanted to say before Peanut interrupted was that I like the idea of bringing the penalty point system back. I mean, I like that you have the long lap penalties. I think it's a good enforcement of a penalty during a race without actually disturbing the race too much. And I think it's brilliant, but still you should add the penalty point system. For example, Marc Marquez gets penalty points for his incident last week. Tucker gets a penalty point, even though I wouldn't penalize him with a long lap. I still would give him a penalty point, and if it happens more often, then give him a penalty. And therefore build some kind of a ranking where you can justify, okay, this rider gets this penalty for the same incident as somebody else who maybe did it for the first time, but this rider pushed somebody else out for the fifth time, you know.
Yeah, it's good to keep that kind of record as well, because say for example you have a rider, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but say you have a rider X, and X commits two of a certain offense, three of another offense, and you tally those up and you say, right, you've done this, and this, you're now getting this penalty because of that. it's a lot easier for everybody because then MotoGP can justify it. The rider knows where they stand, the team knows where they stand, and most importantly, the fans know where they stand as well. The people that they forget about the most of the fans, because it's the fans that watch this and make the sport what it is. It's why we love the sport, because without the fans, we don't have anything. The fans have to know that the riders are being protected and that the system is being implemented in the right way. Without that, there is no point in being here. So this is, I mean, we said this last year and they haven't worked on it, but Dorna have got to find a way of getting rid of this, because it's becoming an everlasting, deep-rooting problem that isn't going away.
Yeah. And I don't need to have 10 injured riders and Jonas Folger winning the championship at the end of the year because he's the only one left there. I don't need this. But yeah, coming to Moto 2, I think Moto 2 was a rather, it wasn't a boring race, but it was an unspectacular race
Mm-hmm.
where we had a little bit of a battle for the victory. Alonso Lopez was leading for a long time, but he was taking those long sweeping lines and kind of overcooked it sometimes into the corners. And Tony Arbolino, as good as he was in the wet last year, he's even better now. Very calm, very calculated, and he made his move when it was safe, when Alonso Lopez went wide, and then never looked back. So yeah, I'm very convinced that Tony Arbolino made a step this year and can maybe challenge for the title. But Alonso Lopez as well, incredible performance. He didn't forget how to ride a motorcycle. It was a bit of a chaotic weekend in Portimao, but I really enjoy what Alonso Lopez did today. But yeah, those two, I mean, better than everybody else. Jack Dixon also didn't fuck it up, even though he was leading, which was rather surprising. But yeah, maybe his new baby gave him the power to overcome this obstacle. And congratulations to him for being a father. Yeah, nothing much more to say about this for me because those three were just head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, first and most importantly, congrats to Jake Dixon and his partner Sarah for the birth of their daughter. Absolutely lovely to see. And I'm sure it's a brilliant experience for both of them. And I'm sure Jake's looking forward to getting back to his family. So big congratulations to them. And like you said, he didn't screw it up. He actually had a pretty good race today. He did lead at one point, but a podium he will be delighted with. Tony Arbolino was brilliant today. Thought he had a great race, very mature race. And like you just said, I think it's clear that he made that step. I think that's what we saw today. So great performance from him. And Alonso Lopez had a great race as well. Thought he did well to hang on to second, looked very comfortable, just went through his motions very well, very confident, very flowing. And really, there's not a whole lot more to say about it. That is basically what the Moto 2 race was today. The only other real notable thing is Lord Pedro Acosta finishing 12th, which was a bit of a surprise. But aside from that, the race was pretty much the race.
I mean, he admitted that the rain is his weak point still, but I think the real reason why he missed out on the victory is that he didn't join our Instagram live. In Portimao, he was on our IG live and wiped the floor with everybody. In Argentina, he didn't, and therefore he struggled a little bit. But I guess we can fix this for the next race, and he will be better in Austin after tuning in on what we have to say.
Yeah, basically what we're saying is that Pedro Acosta's entire success is in no small part down to the podcast. That is basically the conclusion that we have scientifically come to. He joins the Instagram live at Portimao and he smokes the Moto 2 pack pretty easily. And then he doesn't join the Instagram live this weekend and he struggles quite badly in Argentina. He brings the bad weather as a result of the bad luck and he finishes 12th. So basically, what we're saying is, Pedro Acosta, join us on the next Instagram live, like 3 screens, and you will smoke the rest of the grid in Austin, is essentially what we're saying. But yeah, all in all, it was a pretty good race. No real spectacular crashes or anything like that, or real fighting. But a good race, a nice, good, solid race. And yeah, I look forward to Austin because I think that'll be a very good race for Moto 2.
Yeah, and I think there are worse weaknesses to have than being bad in the rain, because there are usually like 2 or 3 rain races. In a 21 race calendar in Moto2, you can get away with it, and I assume Pedro will get away with it, because when the sun is shining again, he will wipe the floor, and if he tunes into our Instagram live, he will wipe the floor with everybody. But I also get a sense that the Moto 2 race seemed a little bit more boring, because the camera was on the top 3 guys all the time and not too much happened there. The MotoGP broadcast, I got to give a shout out to Dorna there. They managed to have the 3 screens on the top left hand corner where we didn't miss anything on what was going on there. But they realized there was no reason to film Marco Bezzecchi the entire time. And when there was a battle up front, I mean, with Alex Marquez and Pecco, and when it's a little bit sad that we missed Pecco's crash live. Therefore, I still think that they should delay the broadcast a little bit, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, or whatever. So therefore, they know, hey, Pecco's crashing, put the camera on him, and then everybody sees who's crashing and who's overtaking somebody. But I think they made a good job. They showed a lot of battles in the midfield, and therefore it seemed more entertaining. And if they would have done it with Moto 2, maybe we would have much more to discuss. But yeah, I also would like to talk about Aaron Canet for a second, and also Sergio Garcia. Those 2 Pons guys did an amazing job. Sergio Garcia wiped the floor with everybody except the top 5, and or the top 4, I should say. Aaron Canet, he had a double long lap penalty for jump start, and what was funny, he had the long lap and came out behind Darren Binder, overtook Darren Binder immediately. The next lap, he had to go to the double long lap again. And within this lap, I mean, not till the end of the lap where he had it, but one time around until the double long lap penalty, this one lap, he overtook him again. And it was absolutely crazy because he was this good. But yeah, unfortunately, double long lap, I think he could have been better if he could have challenged for the top 3. I don't know, because they were so far ahead. But yeah, Aaron Canet made a very, very good long lap. He overtook, I believe it was Philip Salaj and somebody else right after coming out of the long lap, because he had much more drive out of the corner. It was nice to see. So yeah, and also Sergio Garcia had a great recovery, coming from like 25th on the grid with a long lap as well, finishing 5th. So yeah, good job to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to give a shout out to one of your memes, because Sergio Garcia's stonks went very,
Yeah.
very high today. Going from 25th to 5th was just unbelievable. Just what a performance from Sergio Garcia. And as far as Aaron Canet goes, he had a great race also. I'm glad you mentioned him. Darren Binder doesn't like him very much, but I do. So yeah, credit to Aaron Canet. He had a great race to finish where he did, and to overcome the double long lap in the rain was very, very impressive. So big shout out to Garcia and Canet, because they both had very good races today.
And Darren Binder didn't fuck it up. So in a race where it was so easy to fuck it up, Darren Binder didn't. So shout out. I mean, he had a good race last year in Mandalika in the rain, and this one again. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe he knows a thing or two about riding in the rain, but he didn't fuck it up. So that's good for him, I guess. And even he had the golden helmet, which he unlocked after his first Moto 2 crash and 27 MotoGP crashes, and ruining Dennis Foggia's 2021 with the dive bomb into turn 3. And yeah, therefore, I think it's a good weekend for Darren. He's better than in Moto 2 than I expected. But yeah, good
I,
job to him.
I think with Darren Binder, Moto 2 is kind of like the story of Goldilocks and the Three Little Bears, and that Moto 3 was no good because he was too big for Moto 3, and he was basically lumping around, crashing into everyone. Moto GP was no good because he just wasn't good in Moto GP. But I think Moto 2 could actually be a good fit for Darren Binder, because he's got enough speed not to mess things up for everybody, and he could actually be stable enough on the bike as well. So hopefully Darren Bender's pretty good, but I was laughing at the unlocking the gold helmet thing, because he's just, over the last 3 years, he's been such a menace to everybody on the grid. So hopefully things get better for him and he actually progresses.
Yeah, if you take out his crashes, his MotoGP campaign wasn't too bad either. I mean, it was better than probably everybody expected. But yeah, what was weird that they had only 14 laps. I didn't understand it because they said due to the conditions, but the FP3 of the Moto 2 was in sketchy conditions as well. So the argument is out of the window that they didn't have any time to adapt to those conditions. But yeah, I think it's weird. If it's raining, it's raining. I mean, race for the full race distance, and it felt a little bit like an excuse to get done with the Moto 2 race more quickly because I thought maybe they wanted to have more time broadcasting MotoGP and not being behind schedule, which is also stupid to me because there's such a long break between Moto 2 and MotoGP that you can easily fit this into. But yeah, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but it was weird to me that they only had 14 laps.
I think the only reason they've done this is that people are now addicted to sprint races, and I think they're going to try and introduce sprint racing to Moto 2. So I think they're trying to trial it, and it's kind of like a live trial, and everybody in Argentina are the little sort of lab rats. And I think this is the plan from Dorna to try and trial sprint racing in Moto 2 by cutting the amount of time they have. Um, but I don't think it had that much difference in the race, to be honest. You know, like you said, if it's raining, it's raining. So there's no real point in cutting it from 21 laps to 14 because it's going to be the same race regardless. You know, if it was brilliant weather conditions and you cut the time, then you see a difference in the race. But for Argentina, it made no real sense to me either, to be honest.
But I don't mind shorter race distances in itself because you usually get the same action, but on a longer race, you have to bother with fuel consumption, especially in MotoGP, with tire degradation, and it's a little bit cooler if they can go all out. But yeah, I think that Moto 2 and Moto 3, I mean, Moto 3 is fun either way, but Moto 2, they could live with a little bit of a shorter race distance. Same with MotoGP. Today's race could have been 5 laps less, and Frankie would have been on the podium. So this would have been great. But yeah, I don't mind it too much, but to me, it was weird, you know?
Imagine Moto 3 sprint races.
Oh, God, everybody's gonna die. I mean, Moto 3 was too crazy in itself. Suzuki pulled out a Karel Itampawi performance where he wiped the floor with everybody, but so many people crashed. I wrote this down and I'm pretty sure I missed a couple of names. Önsche crashed in the lead. Sasaki had his high sider. Masia had his crash. Riccardo Rossi, I don't know what he was thinking in the last lap. He crashed. Almanza, it wasn't really his fault. Scotty bumped him out, which is a very, very big shame because David Almanza had an incredible race. We will
Oh,
get to this on later. Also, Andrea Minio. And Javier Artigas and David Munoz crashed synchronized, which was weird as well because it felt like Artigas crashed and David Munoz was a little bit shocked for a second and then crashed as well. Like a little bit of a rookie mistake where he wasn't 100% concentrated on himself, but it usually doesn't happen in professional motorcycle racing too much. So it was weird. But yeah, I'm pretty sure a bunch of people crashed as well, but those are like the big crashes I remember. And yeah, I would like to start with Dennis Önci because he somehow always finds a way to fuck up a good situation. He was incredibly aggressive in lap one, where I thought, "What the fuck is going on? Are you trying to kill somebody?" Because he was that late on the brakes, but never made the apex. It was super weird. But at the end, I kind of understood his aggressiveness because it felt like, okay, he knows he has the pace, he wants to get it front so badly, and therefore kind of made it happen and tried it a little bit too hard, but at the end made it happen. So cool. But then he crashed again, which was also a weird crash out of turn 7 or 8 or no 6, turn 6, I believe. Um, but yeah, he fucks up a very good opportunity to do something, which marks 2 weekends in a row where he does it. But yeah, I don't know what's happening with him.
why in God's name did I pick Dennis Onshu to win the Moto 3 World Championship? Leo, I'm going to hell for picking Dennis Onshu because what in God's name was he doing? You know, it's like that meme you made last year of the Turkish dude running around in the scooter. That is what Dennis Onchu was like. You know, Moto 3 race starts, okay, everybody's going off in their start. This absolute lunatic comes flying down the straight into the first corner on his own racing line, which is basically on the other side of the track. And he completely overshoots the apex. And then he somehow gets back in front, and then he manages to bin that as well. I mean, I give up with it's two races into the season, and I'm giving up with Dennis Onchu because I'm just done. I've had enough of him.
To be fair, I still don't know if it was his fault in Portimao or if it was a technical issue. I didn't bother to look it up because it's not that important to me, anyways. But yeah, I don't know if it really was his fault in Portimao, but it definitely was his fault in Argentina. And also, Sasaki kind of finds always a way to fuck up his season because he was so good during last season, but fucked up the beginning of the season, and he's on his way to do it again. He's lucky, as far as I'm concerned, that he's not injured, but also I haven't looked up anything regarding this. I watched the races and pretty much straight on hopped onto the podcast, ate something, and then so therefore I don't have all the knowledge that I usually try to read and watch. To bring it to the podcast. But yeah, Sasaki weird as well because he was in a good position and high-sided and yeah, fucked up his race.
Yeah, it was so weird. You know, it was one of those races where just everybody was falling out and everybody was just crashing out all over the place. You know, I mean, there's a reason why I love Moto 3 and I love it because it's manic, obviously. But like the Ayumu Sasaki crash was just weird. He went out on his own. Jaume Masia crashed. Like you said, David Almanza, who had an unbelievable race, by the way. Shout out David Almanza and the Bristol Grand Prix team. You know, Scott Ogden helped him on his way, sadly. Ricardo Rossi binned it, and I can't even remember who else crashed because there were that many. But I mean, it was just one of those weird days where there were some riders who just lost their heads, I think, and then there were some crashes where people probably weren't at fault. I mean, the Ayumu Sasaki crash, I take issue with because of what we discussed earlier in terms of penalties. Sasaki did not deserve that penalty to drop back one position, and I think that's what led to him crashing and nearly having a very serious injury as well because it was a horrible high side as well. Um, the other ones you can kind of go one way or the other, but the Sasaki crash was awful. You know, he didn't deserve to drop one place, and then how's he going to drop one place when he has to go back into the manic pack he's just gotten out of? So, I mean, Sasaki, I feel really sorry for. He didn't deserve that.
Yeah. And then it comes back to penalizing things. How can you penalize something like this and not something like Maverick Vinales? What's the difference? I mean, Maverick took out Brad Binder, but Ayumu Sasaki just touched Almanza. I mean, it happens. He dropped two places, whatever. It's Moto3. Get on with it. He was incredibly aggressive in this corner, but it was safe for everybody, you know?
It was a
And
textbook racing incident. That's
yeah,
what that was.
yeah. And with his crash, yeah, I don't know if it would have been better if he didn't had to drop the position because he still was in front with a large, not large, but a decent gap to P3 there, I believe, or P4. I can't remember. But yeah, and also Ricardo. I mean, Jorge Masia was doing Jorge Masia shit. I mean, he's good on a couple of occasions, but then he's bad on most races, and then somehow he has his races where he's good but fucks it up. And yeah, I don't know what to make out of him, but yeah, whatever. It's just Jorge Masia, I guess. It says it all. And what I absolutely don't understand, what the hell was Ricardo Rossi seeing in the last corner? He had everything he needed. He had his. He's not the best rider in terms of results over the last couple of seasons, but he had a very good result there. Just take it, take it. It's almost the same with Pecco. Take it and leave with points instead of trying. It seemed like he tried to outbrake them on the outside, got onto some kind of a dirty part of the circuit, lost it in the second to last corner, before the race was over. And yeah, whatever the fuck this was, it's 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 kind of yeah, it kind of fits to the person Riccardo Rossi, because he seems like somebody who is half concentrated on racing and half concentrated on Instagram, and doing like a little fashion show here and doing something with his bros here, and not being fully committed. But yeah, I don't know what the fuck was going on there. He definitely doesn't honor his surname Rossi there anyhow. But yeah, whatever the fuck this was. And with Scott Ogden, I feel very bad for him. He had a great race, and to knock out David Almanza is just unnecessary there. He was too late on the brakes, too aggressive. I got the feeling over the race that he was very calm, very collected at the end of the group, just stayed with the group but didn't want to get in any trouble, and then pick up the pieces and make his moves toward the end. I mean, he kind of did, but he did the wrong move there. Bums me out because Almanza had a very, 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 very impressive race. The weather conditions suited him, of course, but it's still absolutely crazy that he did what he did.
Yeah, and like with Scott Ogden, no excuse, just completely way too late. And David Almanza was the unfortunate victim of that. Riccardo Rossi is just the imposter Rossi. In fact, he doesn't even deserve to be called Riccardo Rossi anymore. He's just Riccardo now. I don't recognize his surname because it is a stain on greatness. Unfortunately, maybe he will earn it back eventually. I don't know, but for the moment, he is not deserving of his surname. Henceforth, he shall be known simply as Ricardo. But in terms of the crash, I don't know what the hell he thought he was doing. Like you said, and you're absolutely right, it's the same as Pecco. Just take the points. You're in a decent position. Take the points for Austin and then build on that. But instead, he saw something that obviously wasn't there and he binned it again. So I mean, I don't know what else I can say. And then Jaume Masia disappoints me, even when I don't expect anything from him. He completely shagged it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know what more can be said.
Yeah, but shout out to Andrea Menu. He did
Oh,
everything
Mino.
right. I mean, the replacement riders really delivered. It was this kind of a weekend where you could shine as a replacement rider, where everything was kind of weird. But Minu showed why he deserves a place on the grid. He's good for those performances. Is he the best rider of the season? No, he had enough chances, but if you're a team and you're not maybe aiming for a championship, you don't have all the resources to compete with Red Bull, KTM, Mario, and Leopard, but you're just a midfield team, get yourself Andrea Menu. He is better for you than Ana Carrasco.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way.
Oh shit, you're in real trouble now, Leo. All the bloody people are going to come after you. To be fair, I actually kind of agree with you. The fact that a rider of the quality of Andrea Mino is not even on the grid is shocking to me because I do rate Andrea Mino very highly. I think he's always been very competitive. I think he's a good rider. He's got bags of experience in Moto 3. If you are a team and you need a proven rider, you're looking at him in Andrea Minu. Look at what he did as a replacement there for the CIP team. If you are a team and you need an experienced rider, get him in because I think he is more than deserving of still being in the grid.
Yeah. And I hope that the stewards keep this energy they had during the Argentina GP when David Munoz is overtaking anybody in the near future. So the drop one position thing for every time there's contact in Moto 3 will be absolutely
Oh,
incredible to see. But yeah, no, for real, the stewards have been stupid. Andrea Minu had been great. What I really liked about this weekend was Diogo Moreira, as well Daniel Algado. They took what was there and didn't fuck it up. That's how you win a championship.
Diogo Moreira and Danny Holgado are the example of how to race in Moto 3. You don't have to do what Dennis Onshu did. I still can't believe I picked him. You don't have to do what Dennis Onshu did and go balls to the wall on every single corner of every single lap of the race. Just race calmly, take what's there on to the next race. There's so many riders across the classes that can learn from this. Just take the points and live to fight another day. Dennis Onchu could just learn so much just from watching Danny Holgado and Diogo Moreira, because they are what you do, and that is why they will both be in championship contention this year. They know when to get involved in the fight. They know when to retreat and live to fight another day. If you can't tell that, you don't belong in the paddock. It's that simple.
Yeah. And if you feel stupid that you picked Dennis Öncü, always remember that KTM picked Dennis Öncü to replace Danny Olgado in Ayo's team, which is absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, Danny Olgado is doing absolutely great right now. Diogo Moreira. What's weird about Diogo Moreira, he is from Brazil. He's born there, he's raised there, and he raced motocross there. Then moved over to Spain at a pretty young age, but I believe I would have to look it up. I can't remember. I will look it up. But what was weird is that Diogo Moreira, he has a very Spanish accent in when he's speaking English. And you and I both watch a lot of not MotoGP, of course we watch MotoGP, but UFC.
Mm-hmm.
And Brazilian people usually have a very different accent when speaking English, which is weird when you hear Diogo Moreira and it's totally different. I have his Wikipedia page here.
Edited by your good self, I imagine.
I actually um, never edited a Wikipedia page. I'm not bothering to do this because at the end of the day, it's not worth it. But he is born in 2004 and moved to Spain in 2017. So quick math, he was 13 when he went there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I still think it's a little bit weird, but that should be all of it for today. Diogo Moreira has a weird accent, but if that's the worst thing about him, worst, I mean, it's like a Spanish accent because he lives in Spain for like the past couple of years now, 6 years, I would imagine, if my math is correct. Um, yeah, then you have a pretty good rider there. If that's like the weak point, and he's delivering. He is on the podium again. His first win will come. And looking through his Wikipedia page, what was weird to me, he actually never won a race since the European Talent Cup days, and he won one race there. So he has, if I'm not mistaken, one race victory on the European slash international scene on his record, which is yeah, I don't want to say disappointing, but I would expect more of a rider with his capabilities.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that he will win a race or two this year and prove everybody wrong. Because, I mean, not that everybody doubts him, because a lot of people picked him to win, to be the world champion. But yeah, and Marquez didn't win a lot on the junior scene either, so it's not the end of the world.
No, absolutely. And look, the last point that I'll make to round this off is, of all things that I ever thought I would talk about, Diogo Moreira's accent. The one thing that I'll say is that whenever you learn a language or a language, a lot of it's dependent on where you learn it and who you learn it from. So if, for example, Leo, if I moved to Germany and you taught me how to speak German, I would sound a lot like you because that's the source of my learning. I would sound with a very heavy Cologne accent. Whereas if you learned English from me, you would have an accent very similar to mine because that's the source of learning. Now, I don't want to interrogate Diogo Moreira because we don't question people's national origins on this podcast. We're not Donald Trump supporters, at least I hope you're not. But my guess is with Diogo Moreira is that he moved to Spain and learned English in Spain. So the person that he learned English from, he probably has their accent because that's who taught him. Now, if there's any of our European friends or linguistics experts who want to offer their opinion, I'm open to it. But that's my theory. I'm not saying he's an illegal immigrant or anything. I'm simply making the point.
Yeah. And regarding the German accent from Cologne, which is called Kölsch, we could end this with a phrase I like to say when I want to say goodbye to somebody. Machat Jod, schwenkt de Hut. and it kind of means goodbye, wave your hat. So since you have a hat, it's kind of appropriate to wave your hat right now. And I will see you in 2 weeks in Austin. And I really enjoy those primetime races in Europe. It's
Oh,
incredible to me. I would like to move to Bangkok or whatever for the just for the sole purpose of watching MotoGP at primetime. I really enjoy this. Yeah, I slept in tonight or today. My girlfriend was watching Formula One, and I kind of I watched like a little bit with her because I was awake when the first restart happened, and then I slept through the whole race because at the end of the day, Formula One was rather boring to me. And yeah, a lot of carnage happened, but then I had some good time with her and the animals today, and then watch MotoGP, and I really enjoyed that. Now my day is finished, and I can go to bed now and sleep. So yeah, I'm very thankful for you for joining me, and I will see you in 2 weeks in Austin, where we hopefully have a lot of Mark Marcus mayhem to cover.
oh, there is no doubt we will. Thank you very much for having me as always. Thank you very much to everybody for watching. As always, it is a pleasure to be a part of this, and we will see you next time in Austin, Texas. Yeehaw!
Mach het Jod, schwenk de Hut.